hadday tahay dhir, hadday tahay kale, hadday tahay cayayaan, hadday tahay ugaar, hadday tahay waa meesha maartay daraasadeeda iyo ilaalinteeda.
dhirtii waa la dhameeyay maalin walba inta soo baabuur boqol oo baabuur ba soo gasha. waxa weeye wasaaradda deegaanku waa in sharcigeedii ay adkaysaa dhirta. anagu aad baanu u dhaliilsanahay wasaaradda muxuu ahayd deegaanka. dadkuna way dhaliilsan yihiin.
Wonderful resource, but it's a resource made up of contributions by multiple institutions, including the University of Hargeisa.
Assalamu alaikum. Maanta waxaan joognaa xafiiskii ama xaruntii waxa la yiraahdaa af Ingiriisiga Somaliland Biodiversity Foundation. Somaliland Biodiversity Foundation marka aynu af Soomaaliga aynu u rogno waxay noqonaysaa foundation waa hay'ad ama urur khayriya oo ka shaqeynaya noolaha biodiversity, noolaha kala duwan ee Somaliland. noolaha kala duwan ee Somaliland waxaana ogtiin in biodiversity waxa la yiraahdo iyo marka cimiladan isbedelaysa climate change la yiraahdo iyo global warming waxa soo dhamay inay dirtii iyo noolihii iyo wixii oo dhan dib u leeyay. halkan markaanu fadhino maanta xarunta waxa la sameeyay 2016 waxaana sameysay barigii anigu jaamacadda Hargeysa markaa aan mas'uuliyiinteeda kamid ahaa ayaa nasiib wanaag waxaa noo timi Professor Mary Barkworth oo professor botany ka dhigaya Utah State University. asalkeedii hore waa Ingiriis iyadoo yar reerkoodu Canada markaa u guureen. dabeedna Canadian bay noqotay oo waa Canadian ayay daljirahaan noqotay. laakiin markii ay jaamacadda ka baxday Mareykan bay markaa tagto jaamacaddaasi ka shaqeynaysay intii nolosheeda oo dhan oo ay professor botany ay ka ahayd. halkan waa qof aad iyo aad u firfircoon. ilaahay uu nagu guuleeyay halkan inay timaado. marna markay halkan timaado dalkii iyo dadkiiba way jeclaysatay. dabeedna markaasaanu bilownay fikradan Somaliland Biodiversity Foundation ama hay'adda noolaha kala duwan ee Somaliland ka shaqeynaysa badbaadadiisa. maanta waxaan fursad u helay aan doonaynaa in aanu Somaliland Biodiversity Foundation ama ururka ka shaqeynaya noolaha oo dhan dhir iyo wixii kale nool oo dhan aynu leenahay sidii loo ilaalin lahaa, sidii aynu hore ugu marin lahayn ayaan maanta halka kan barnaamijkii ugu horeeyay ka qabanayna. qoladaydan qabanaysa waxa weeyaan qoladeedii barnaamijyadii kafadaha miisaan loo oran jiray qaban jirtay. awal markii hore waxaanu ka hadli jirnay umuuro bulshada iyo wax toosinta iyo laakiin imika waxaanu bilaabaynaa barnaamijyadan camaliga ee la qabto sidii kii biyaha aanu kaga hadlaynay ee hore. marka sidaynu barnaamijka u bilaabanayna waxa weeyaan Mary ba ayaan imika ku wareejin doonaa. marka iyada nafteeda sheegi doonta ka doona. xagana waxa nala fadhiya Faisal oo isaguna nin dhalinyaro ah oo ninka haya halkan herbarium ka ayaa u badan shaqada imika lagu qabanayo. laakiin shaqooyinka kale loo qabto waxa kamid ah cayayaanka iyo halkan oo sawirka ku yaalo xataa masaskeena iyo waxa la iyo bisaagaladeen iyo waxa soo dhan oo laga shaqeynayo. xoolaha iska daa kale ee dogaadha iyo dhulka inoo joogta iyo kuwa hadalkooda badaashi. marka waxyaalaha imika inagu aynu fududeysaneen aynaan cilmi ahaan aynaan siinin intibaah, aynaan siinin dhaqan ahaan intibaah. waxaasaynu halka kan maanta kaga hadlaynaa. imika halkan waxaad ku aragtaan halkaa waxaan ku hayaa caleen, halkaana waxaan ku hayaa waxa weeyaan waa caday. cadaygaasi waa mirimiridii weeyaan, waa geedkan mirimirida neem tree baa la yidhaahdaa. waa haddaanad maaragtay aanad haysanin cadaygii kale iyo baashi la isticmaalayay isaga. caleentaan halkaa ku haynaana waa caleema halkaa ka baxayo waxa weeye waa dikrigii weeyaan. dikriga aynu dawana way ku jirtaa. inaga dikriga iyo geed xamarka iyo subaga iyo isticmaalo faa'iidadeedii baynu ognahay. dad dhir ku nool baynu nahay. inaga iyo xooluba dhirtii baynu ku nool nahay. cimiladu way isbedelaysaa, dunidu way isbedelaysaa. haddana inaga dhirtii jarjarayno googoynayno oo tursanayno. marka taasaanu meesha imika u sameynay. Imika markaa waxaan ku wareejinayaa Mary Barkworth, Professor Mary Barkworth of Ingiriisi markaa imika ku hadli doonta.
I came into botany pretty late, 28 years old. I took my first botany class, but I found that plants were absolutely fascinating. And if you understand what you see around you, you enjoy going out and around about much more than if you just, that's green stuff over there. And so that was what got me involved in it. And then I've been teaching plant taxonomy for many years at the Utah State University. And I came up to retirement and somebody suggested, why don't you take an interest in Somaliland? And it really was that casual. I said, okay, let's do it. And when I looked around, you want to bring, well, what strengths can I bring that would be helpful and complement what they have? And it seemed like the one thing that I had experience with was building collections, helping people learn to identify plants, and also about sharing data, which is the big deal about this century, that we share data. It's not in books, just in books. It's not just in scientific publications. We put it available on the internet, and that was a big development that was going on around 2000. And so since coming here, and Professor Abdussalam was one of the first two, Amitawali was the other one, and I said, well, I need to see the country. I'd never been to Africa at all, so not even Somaliland. And can I come out and see what you have? And I think it's set aside this room for the herbarium, and we talked about what could be accomplished. And I might say that my first experience, what's still the truth, in some ways is very humbling, because the plants here are very different from the plants in North America, which is where I have done my botany. But I'm learning, and I'm enjoying the learning, and at the same time, we can share the knowledge about what we have and build up a permanent collection for Somaliland, develop online resources for Somaliland about their plants, so that it'll be easier for the next generation, or even this generation, to learn about them. Because passing knowledge on one person to one person depends very much on who you know. Making it available on the web makes it more accessible to more people. And so that's really where my focus has been here, and working with Faisal, and he knows the plants much better than I do. It really is going out, looking at them, and interacting with them and talking with people the whole time. He has an advantage, he speaks Somali. I don't. But I've got the background in having learnt, people call them scientific names. I like to refer to them as the international names. I mean, local names, the ones that you learn from your parents, are very common, but they don't necessarily go across a boundary. They may not even go to the next village. But what we call the scientific names could also be called the international names, that they will be understood around the world. And then you can start putting together, what do you know? What do they know over there? What can we learn about this species from what they've found out? And that was one of the ones on that one was, there's a plant, Lucini, I don't know what it is, Lucini leucofolia. And people wanted to plant more of it. And the trouble is that people elsewhere have said, uh-oh, watch it. If you get that, it will become invasive. It will take over. Just like you have prosopis here. It was brought in thinking it would be a really useful plant. And it loves it here. It's taken over the watercourses and the wadis, and the goats don't like going in it because they don't like the big spines. So if you can find out from elsewhere how that plant has behaved, it may prevent you making big errors and things like that. But you can also get help from people in sharing your data, in helping with identifications. And this here, which is not in use, eventually, and unfortunately not this week, not this visit, we're going to be able to take images of our flat herbarium specimens, which we must go and look at next, this fundamental thing. And then we could have them on the web, and we could ask people, have we identified this correctly? Or we could not identify this. Would you help us with it? And if you put out a few at a time and you contact the right people, they're enormously helpful. And there was one that I sent out from here. It was a person who works in Northern Australia. And he said, I think that looks very much like what we have here. I can't even remember what the plant was, but indeed it was. You know, I went and I checked the plant. So you get help from a lot of people by sharing your data. And at the same time, we can say we know this was present in Somaliland at this time. In fact, the next big push is to find ways to try and get more data in so we can put more data points on the map, and you can use this to say, okay, well, where should we try replanting this? Where it's the most likely to have success? Because one of the things that's become, you know, with local climate change, we've talked a lot about climate change, and too often it means they are polluting, they are causing it. But there's a little book, and I gave copies to Dean Abdul Razak, Agriculture, and he's sharing it with Abdi Fattah, that about managing local climate change. And the argument in the book is that you can't do much about, you know, the jet flying, but what you can do is build a windbreak here, avoid creating a place where the water will run off too fast, block the water here, and in doing so, you will make it probably better if you're growing crops for your crops. You'll make it better for people to live. You'll keep the climate cooler in your area. You'll keep the moisture in the soil. You'll make your soil healthier. Your crops will do better. And actually, so will the native plants and the native insects, and everybody will be better off for doing this. So we need to move outside the university, stay in the university, but extend outside it to try and build this understanding one community at a time. And so we're going to work with the Botanical Garden, at least that's what we were talking about on Thursday last week, to try, and they could hold workshops there. It helps with students to take them away. They can't go back at night. They can't be nearby. They can't miss the bus. They are there. For international people, they like coming and they'll meet together with people. But we could hold, you know, they could hold 4 or 5 day workshops there about the Somaliland environment. Come and see what insects we have and build the information about what's here now. And then you can measure changes. You can't measure changes if you don't know what was there.
I would like to talk about, you know, 2 points, which are three actually, which are very, very important for our conversation. One is the idea of the herbarium, and you know, because many people do not have any idea about it. Because the second thing is, you know, the people. After we started this project, you know, the people that we introduced, like Henley Bickering, who wrote this book about the, you know, plants of Somaliland in English first, and now this is the Somali, you know, translation. And also, the third thing that I want you to talk about is the online, you know, the online international herbarium, on which you put the name of Somaliland there. Yes, and then finally, you know, as you just mentioned it, how to reach out to the community. We have to go, you know, to the communities, because this project is so important. You know, we can't keep it in the universities. We have to go out, you know, to people who are actually using the plants, such as the farmers and the nomads and, you know, and the other people, particularly the young people. So go ahead, please.
Okay. First of all, what's a herbarium? Well, on my more flippant moments, I will say it's a home. Faisal, could you get out a packet, you know, folder, please? Bring it over. It's a home for squashed dead plants. But let me give you a bit of the history. It was around the Mediterranean, and people were studying plants and trying to figure out, you know, how could you tell what it is? How can you tell somebody else what it is? What are the important characteristics? And always there was an emphasis on medicinal plants. They were really important. But there was this one chap, Lucucini, in Italy, in Pisa, Italy, and he was teaching medicinal plants, and it was frustrating because he couldn't study them in winter. They died, and so, you know, there were no leaves. Blah. So Then he had this brilliant idea. Being a woman, I think he was looking at how people look after clothes. His solution, thank you, was to take specimens in the summer and press them, dry them, and glue them to paper. And that's what this is. Plant material and a label. And notice the barcode. We will come back to the barcode later. But if you've got the plant material, we find out not only can you use it to check when you've collected something, does my plant look like that plant? You can use it, you could actually extract DNA from it. You can study the anatomy of it. These are much more useful than he envisioned. He thought it would be handy. And all his students thought it was wonderful. They could probably study for their exams better that way. And he used to put them in, well, put it down, so. He would put them into notebooks. And so you would literally have pages of a book. So every student graduated from there. They had their notebook with them. And when they went, they carried the idea over. And this was so much easier. Before that, people transplanted plants. And you can't transplant something from the Mediterranean to Northern Europe and count on it growing. You can take a pressed, dried specimen. And I mean, that's what, a few years later, we knew far more about more plants because it became universal. You will do these pressed, dried plants. And it's what made subsequent botanists like Linnaeus able to do a lot of work by comparing lots of different things without having to have a garden, them growing successfully.
It's very delicate.
So a herbarium is a place where you have herbarium specimens. Now, the other thing that's become increasingly important is the amount of information or the quality of information on the label, the typewritten label. In the old days, you would put a name on and you just say a little muttering, add a little phrase about how it differed from something or other else. Now, you're expected to say what it is, what reference we're using to find that out, but also to give very detailed information about where you collected it. Not Somaliland, not Hargeisa. We're in Somaliland, we're in Hargeisa. Because nowadays we can go, and if we've got the longitude and latitude, you can go and take a look at environmental maps, topography maps, and say, okay, this thing always seems to grow where such and such is true. And that is what helps you say, okay, we could replant this here. It looks like it would be successful. It's the label information that's important. And so that plus good quality specimen is what makes good quality herbarium specimens. And museum specimens, museum specimens are specimens of all those other groups like animals. But you can't do those as easily. You can't squash an animal and put it on a stick of paper. So you have to use different techniques. So that's one of the things that makes it easier to study plants than many other groups. And you were mentioning the international herbarium. It's actually international, it's the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. And it shares data from natural history collections around the world, but not just natural history collections. It takes records from when they go out to collect germplasm for developing new breeds. So it's got germplasm records in there. Sometimes when they're going into the oceans and they're trying to find out what's in the oceans, they'll take up a bucket of water and do DNA sequencing, and they can tell a lot from that as to what's present. And another one that fascinated me was if you're in the tropics, you can take leeches when they're full of blood, analyze what's in the blood, and find out what big animals they have been getting the blood from. And so now you know what's present in the forest that you hadn't seen. So the Global Biodiversity Information also brings that together, and it'll bring observations. There's more bird records in there than anything else. But it's a wonderful resource. But it's a resource made up of contributions by multiple institutions, including the Herbarium at the University of Hargeisa. And we also actually, we do it through a website called Open Herbarium, because I know how to use the software from there, and it's free. lovely advantage, but they also make it very easy to contribute to GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. And when I asked GBIF people, we're just starting a herbarium. I think at the time we had fewer than 300 specimens.
And can you talk about the other people that you attracted, like Helen and Stephen and
yeah.
you know, and
But let me just finish this one and then I will, I promise. Anyway, so they immediately said yes, and so we've been there, and it's the only herbarium in the Horn of Africa that's shared by GBIF. Yep. So another thing, every now and again I'll give a talk or I'll meet people, and I gave a talk at Kew, which is a big herbarium in London, and Helen Pickering was there. And she came up to me afterwards and says, when are you going to Somaliland next? I want to go there. Wow, okay, not sure about this. And somebody else came in, you want to get her involved. And she has been absolutely wonderful. And she takes wonderful pictures. And it was, I think, after her first visit, more or less, we pushed her into publishing a book that shares her pictures and some simple descriptions. And her comment is she's writing for the driver, the nurse, not the botanist, not the professional, just ordinary everyday people. And they're really good. I don't have a copy because I've given away mine, unfortunately. But sold out, and we're going to reprint it. Unfortunately, the reprinted version is going to be bilingual. That's going to be better. The binding will be stronger. There's some better pictures and more pictures, but it's also going to be more expensive. So we're going to really, Faisal's going to be going around and trying to get people to sell it.
Send, to the Somaliland community and to its government?
I'd say encourage people to get to know their plants. And one of the ways I would like to see is that, I'm going to go a little bit back from that, on a story, persuaded one group of people that once they clean, it was land of prosopis, clear the prosopis out, what do you put back in? And I was arguing, based on some papers I'd read, put in a mix, prepare the soil, put in a mix of native species, and then let them grow. Keep guard on the weeds, but let them grow. The ones that are well adapted there will grow there. You will bring back with them, you will bring back the ground insects that keep your soil healthy. Some will grow better than others, but you will establish, it's not a natural community, but you will have restored the community. But there's one big problem to doing that. It's very hard to get the starting material, seeds, seedlings, saplings. There are only a few available. So one of the things that I would like to do, this is coming to getting out into the community, is to encourage local communities to form a group and say, let's find out, let's collect seeds from what we have around us, and then work on figuring out how to get them to germinate, because not all will do it easily.
Okay, let me ask you a question about this.
That's what I would like to do.
Yes.
In fact, I was talking, there are groups starting seed banks, but they're mostly focusing on the crops.
Foods, yeah.
And I'm trying to say, look, all of your plants, and if you sort of got people involved and maybe even work through this public school system or any school system, and try that. And we also would like documentation of when you collected it, where, and so we can build up dots on the map as to where things grow. But it seems to me that as you build, if you can get some environmental, well, I don't know, laws, regulations, or good practices, try to reestablish some native communities in the area and purchase seeds from local communities in the areas. And so it might be a bit of a source of income, but also an awareness thing. So that's why I really want to do it. I mean, I would like additional data. I think people need to be looking more at the plants around. And I know, because when I was young, that was conifer, that was a deciduous tree, and that was it. I knew a few, but not a whole lot. And it's when you start looking at them, you think, oh, there's more than I knew. And it's fun.
Yeah. Okay, I think, that is a very important message, that we have sent. And we will now give the microphone to Ahmed.
bismillahi raxmaan raxiim aad iyo aad ayaynu ugu mahadnaqanaa caalimkan weyn ee halkan inagala hadlayay oo ah Professor Mary oo jaamacadda Utah ee waddanka Mareykanka maaragtay ka dhigi jirtay cilmiga dhirta ama botaniga. Waxaan ugu mahadnaqnaa oo kale iyadoo shaqadii ka howlgabtay inay maanta inaga tabaruc inoogu imanayso oo ay shaqo weyn oo cilmiga dhirta ah oo herbariumka la yiraahdo inagala shaqeynaysa. Xafiiskanna iyada ayaa furtay ninkan Faisal inankanna uu la shaqeynayaa oo isaguna cilmiga beeraha iyo wax ka yaqaana. waxa laga hadlayaa waxa weeyaan dhirtii waddankeena laga hadlayaa intaanan u dhirta qaana qaar badan baa dabar go'ay waagi dhaweedii aanu xagga buurta daala tagnay waxa weeyaan waxaan aad ula yaabay weligay maan moodin horena waan u sheegay inaynu dhirta caynkana ee aan weligay dabiiciga aynaan arag marka aan la taaban ee sidii Ilaahay u abuuraya jirideedu ay inta leegtahay laga yaabo inay 1000 sanadood wax ka badan jirtay weligay ma arag halkan Hargeysa waxa jirtay dhirta gobka aad baa loo laayo daar yar xuno qanuun baa laga dhisaa oo waa la jajabiyaa dhirta waa la googooyaa geed 1000 sanadood jiray oo u baahan waliba inay intaan daweyno in 1000 kala jiro inuu gunta ka taamasan maqsin yar xuno dhoobaa ka dhisnaa xafada aan ku dhashay ee dusha oo xafada waliba daabtiyaalada oo geed gablo loo oran jiray geed weyn baa magac ku baxay geedkiiba xaafada dhaba geed gabla loo oran jiray geedkiiba waa la gooyay caruurta quraanka ku hoos barin jirtay geed caan u ahaa oo de weligiiba jiray waxa weeyaan inaku uma jeedna waxayna dilay waxa dhirteennii inaga xasuuqnay waa ogtiin maalin walba intaasoo baabuur baa soo gasha oo dhirtii gudin lagu soo gooyay baa la keenaya dhuxushii baa la keenaya marka dhirta la waayo oo gaadha waayo binaadankana waa la waayaa waliba inagu waxaanu ka mid nahay cilmiga dhirta xoog baynu noqonay geed aynaan u aqoonin magac ma jiro waxa la soo saaray oo imka la ogaaday dadkii halkan maray sida gabadha kan buugan qortay la yiraahdo muxuuna Helen la yiraahdo waxa la soo saaray 280 geed oo adduunyada meel kale ku oolin waddankeena ku yaalaan waliba khaasatan dhirtan waxa laga helayaa waxa weeyaan dhulka aan wadi la taaban waxaan leenahay maalintii dhaweedii aanu anagu ka hadlanay dawgan muxuu ahaa buurtan daalo ee tabca waaban la jeclayno waxaan nidhi war haddii wadadan la sameeyo dee dhirtana gooyin baa loogu talagelaya dhur badan baa la gooyay imika dad baa ka daba tegay waliba xagga barigeeda daalo oo boosaasaa la geynayay oo dhirtaa la gooynay dadkii waxa weeyaan gudinna way sitaan afweyn qori dablana way sitaan labadaas waa labada baabiyey ma garanaysaa muxuu ahaa dhirteennii baabiyey halka anigoo soo kobay waxa weeyaan wasaaradda degaankana shaqadeeda weeyaan hawshan inay qabato anigu aad baanu u dhaliilsannahay wasaaradda muxuu ahaa deegaanka dadkuna way dhaliilsan yihiin dhirtii waa la dhameeyay maalin walba intaasoo baabuur boqoloo baabuur baa soo gasha wax kaloo lagu sameeyaa dhirtii oo qoyan baa lasoo goynayaayo maxaa laga dhigayaa baytalmiyadaa lagu samaynayaa galoolkii waxa weeyaan wasaaradda deegaanku waa in sharcigeedii ay adkaysaa dhirta waa in forestry la sameeyaa ilaaladii dhirta la sameeyaa waxa weeyaan dadkii aqoonta lahaa ee dibadda inooga yimid oo ay ka mid tahay Mary oo kale ayaa Professor Mary ayaa inoo imanaya oo halkaa inooga ina caawinaya iyagoo howlgabay oo shaqadoodii ka fadhiistay ayaa ina caawinaya inaga ma la helayaa ruux dumar ah ama oday inaga oo daadaas oo intuu shaqadiisii ka fadhiistay ka shaqaynaya waddan kale yani waxa weeyaan aqoontu waa dhaqan weeyaan waxa weeyaan inaynu dhalinyaradeenna la baro cilmiga botaniga aynu baranno iskuulladeena laga dhigo oo xoog loo horumariyo waliba dhirta waddankeena u dhalatay aynu ilaalino waxa jirtay doogag waddankeena laga qaaday baa jira oo intoo la geeyay dibadda ayaa GM wax la yiraahdaa genetically modified baa la yiraahdaa maaragtay GM baa inta badan lagu soo gaaday ayaa laga dhigay qolooyin baa keensaday inagoo mashruuc muxuu ahaa hore dusheeda la yidhi loodaa looga beerayaa geedkii baa la soo iibsaday geedkani markuu 10 muddo joogo wuu dabar go'ayaa waliba maxaa kale uu keenayaa wuxuu keenayaa dhirteeniina wuu dabar go'ayaa ilaa waxa weyn ilaa xasharaadkii baa qaadaya imika waad ogtiin xabxabka inoo yimaada waxaan la beero dhan waxaan oo dhammi waa cunto laynoo sameeyey adduunyada waxaa la doonayaa in caloosha laynaga gumaysto oo inaga awal baan cunto soo saari jirin intii yar dabiiciga lahayna siiyana inagii baa dabar goynana marka waxaan hadda kugu soo koobaya wasaaraddan deegaanka wacyigelin weyn baa laga doonayaa maalina aad iyo aad bay ugu mahadsan tahay shaqada weyn ee ay nala qabtay xooga aad baanu ugu mahadnaqanaa
barnaamijkii imika waa gebagebo waxaan doonaynaa kuga dhammaynaynaa weliba midaanu doonayno maaragtay in la soo celceliyo oo ah hadal ay Mary tidhi oo ah qofkuna wuu dhashaa geedkuna wuu dhashaa qofkii geedkuna way isku nool yihiin marka de ma qofkii baynu ilaalinaa ma geedkii baynu ilaalinaa mise labadaba waynu ilaalinaa haddaynu geedkii ilaalin weyno qofkii iyo xoolihii maxay ku noolaanayaan markaa dhirtii yareedina curdinka ahayd ee dabago-aysay markay dee dhimaato innagana waxay nagu imanayaa waxaynu ogno waa gaajo iyo abaar iyo dadkii oo dhinta marka Mary baa intaa ingiriisi ku sheegi doontaa iyadaan marka u dhiibayaa Mary we want to make a kind of a short sort of message that we flicker, which is talking about how people and plants are related. People born, plants are born. So if we kill the plant, can the human being live? Can the animal live? Please.
One of the comments I make sometimes when we're talking about the plants, and it's something that is evident. That is, people don't seem to realize that if you don't allow the plant to grow up, it is not going to provide forage next year. It's not going to set seed the year after. Plants, like people, have to be allowed to live. And that's one of the things that, as we've been concerned about feeding animals in building our houses, we've forgotten that we need the plants. We really, really need them. They are the primary collectors of energy and they transfer it. But the plants need the insects because the insects help make the soil good and they do the pollination, mostly insects. And then the birds and other animals disperse the seeds. Everything is connected, but it starts with plants. Now, some people will tell you that's a botanical bias, but you have to capture the sun's energy. And plants do it for most of us, and most of the animals that we cultivate, I'm a botanist, aren't I, that we take care of, they also rely on plants. But the trouble is, if we allow the animals to make the decision, they will go for the young, growing plant that tastes more delicious than the older one, maybe easier to get to. If the humans make the decision, okay, I will cut these branches off and feed them to my animals, you have a better chance of allowing the plant to grow up and also to be able to feed your animals next year. But if you eat the plants, you allow your animals to eat the plants, as soon as they come through the soil, they won't grow. And the Botanic Garden has only recently kept goats out. And they are noticing a number of species that are important to local people are regerminating, are growing, they're much more abundant than they used to be. Young plants. And if there are no young plants, you're on the way to having bare soil. And here, and Ahmed Awali made this point, when they used to have goats on the campus in the University of Hargeisa, and I think it was a year or 2 years after they'd been removed, he noticed that there's an invasive tree species that is taking over much of the area. You can find it throughout the university grounds. It'll probably be taken care of with buildings. But it's not, I'm not trying to say no goats. We want to eat. We want to support our families. But sometimes maybe we have to pay a little bit more attention to what it's going to take so that our families, our children, can also live well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor. This is the first one. We are going to do more, inshallah, in the future when Mary comes back, inshallah. And we would also like to mention that because of the work that Mary has been doing here in Somaliland, establishing the herbarium, her reputation has got around, and now she's helping other countries such as Pakistan and Seychelles, and she even went to Ethiopia and Kenya, and they actually used her knowledge and assistance in order to improve their herbariums in these countries. So Mary not only established, this herbarium and this biodiversity foundation with really her incredible efforts, to using sometimes their money. I mean, and then also fundraising. See, because up to now we don't. In fact, we haven't got any fundraising or any financial support from Somaliland, business institutions and Somaliland government yet. And it's important to get funds, and support both from the government as well as the business community, as well as the Somaliland diaspora, and anyone who can support. Even a dollar can help. See, so we have to support this kind of project, which is actually sustaining life in the country. We could talk about sustainability in these days, but sustainable life. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll come back with the next programs as well. way halkaan fadhinaa waa xafiiskii Somaliland Biodiversity Foundation oo macnaheedu yahay waa xafiiska noolaha oo dhan Somaliland ku nool hadday tahay dhir hadday tahay noole kale hadday tahay cayayaan hadday tahay ugaar hadday tahay xayawaankaynu aynu rabayno waa meesha maartay daraasadeeda iyo ilaalinteeda waa ururka loo xilsaaray ururka waxaa la sameeyay 2016 waxaa nala sameysay Professor Mary Barkworth marka imika waxaynu fadhinaa herbariumkana barnaamijku ku iman doona marka aynu sharxayno waxaanaynu u baahanahay siday Professor Mary ay imika inagu boorisay in aynu mar walba arrinka kan xukuumad iyo dawlad iyo dadkii bulshadii iyo dadkii oo dhami gacmaha la isqabsado iyo magaalaba si aynu arinteena aynu adkayno uga shaqeyno ma arrin cid kaliya khuseeya waa dadkoo dhan booda khuseeya kolka dadaalkaasi inaynu sameeyno weeyaan wabillahi tawfiiq